All right, so Katie, are we good to go?
You are good to go.
All right. So
Right.
thanks everybody for coming. Sorry we had some technical difficulties here at the end, but we're here. We're ready. I'm excited. I'm nervous with these great folks. So the way we're going to run this is I'll real briefly say everybody's name. I'll talk a little bit about the defense of comic books, and then I want to get out of the creator's way. And instead of asking just general questions, everybody's going to talk about their books and the impact on education and making and teaching graphic novels in the classroom, those sorts of things. And at the end, whatever time is left, we want to have time for, I have some specific ways you can use these great books in your classroom, and then also Q&A, although we can take a look at the Q&A as we go through it. So the creators were kind enough to suggest that if you would like, to put a topic in the chat that you might like them to draw as we are chatting. And we could share those at the end of the chat. And also, Jarrod had a great idea that you could draw it and you could share it as well towards the end. So if you'd like to do that, throw a suggestion in the chat and we'll go from there. So I will say personally, my own children are super excited that I'm working with everybody here because they've read the books and we love the books. So Aron Nels Steinke, Jarod Rosello, Mika Song, Remy Lai, and Jarrett Lerner. And so we'll go through and I'll just let everybody introduce themselves because you don't want to hear me talk through the whole way. And then we'll go through the process that way. First, I think we all agree, we really want to thank Sarah Smith and Katie McNamara and CSLA. I mean, in a time when our voices are quieted in a lot of ways because of COVID, to be able to do this and have a whole graphic novel strand is just awesomeness. So just real briefly, this is me. If you want to get in touch with anything about using comics in your classroom, my website is teachingwithcomics.com. I have lesson plans and resources. I'm on social media. You can email me if any of your pesky administrators get in your way about using comics in your classroom. I'll throw all kinds of research your way and Common Core standards, and we'll get it done. So real briefly again, why comics? These are just some of the things that we can talk about. Comics, sequential art, visual literacy goes back thousands of years as part of human history. The Bayo Tapestry, the Mexican Codex, it's been with us for quite a long time. My own son and lots of people have the same idea, the reluctant reader. There's no better engagement that I found in education than graphic novels and comics. But it's not just pulling kids in to read, it's actually using graphic novels and comics as creating deep and analytical readers and writers. It's not just for, you know, K through 3. I'm a high school teacher and I also teach college students as well with comics. Sequencing, prediction, summary are all perfectly done with comics. The visual literacy, just the 21st century learning that's all around us all the time. What I love about visual art is it's open to interpretation. It's like reading a poem. It's like listening to a hip hop song. What do you take from that? And our students can agree and disagree on those kinds of things. When we create comics in the classroom, it forces students to pre-write. It's like the hardest thing to get students to do, pre-write before you write that essay, because you only have so many pages or so many panels to create. Textual visual evidence, the built-in scaffolding, English is a second language or any language, and again, the 21st century reading. So again, that's just briefly. When I talk to departments of education, when I do school in-services, when I bring up Common Core, that's when the three-piece suits in the room sit up straight, because now we're talking, right? We've got Common Core directly tied. So if you have a problem with a higher up or a parent about Common Core and comics being real literature, it literally says to use graphic novels in our Common Core standards. So what you say back is, hey, if we're not using graphic novels in our classrooms, we're not following Common Core. Drop the mic and walk out of the room and we're good. All right, so this, and I'll leave off this and then we'll go to the creators. So I've always long used this study in my presentations over here on the left. And it tells us that, and I can tell you from my own kids at the dinner table, the vocabulary that they're able to understand because of comics, that we're exposed to much higher level vocabulary in a comic. And a lot of that has to do with, you only have so many words that you can use with an image. So anyway, I did all that. And then Jarrett Lerner goes and puts it together in this awesome illustration. And it's like, boom, I got it in 5 seconds. That, and so this is now my new presentation slide when I talk to educators around the world, is look at the difference. look at the difference. Both give you the same information. All right. So we're going to start with Aron, and then we'll just do that. It's easier for me to control one person, the presentation. So when we get to the end, or when you want me to go to the next slide, just literally just say next, and I'll go to the next slide. So I will get out of the way. And Aron, if you could lead us off.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, so I am a cartoonist. I'm also an educator. I've taught for about the last 10 years, and people might know me most from my graphic novel series, Mr. Wolf's Class. But I wanted to do a little slideshow first. So when I was a kid, I was like, I guess, one of those reluctant readers. And it's not that I didn't have the skills of reading. I just didn't have a lot of engagement and buy-in into the books that were available for me. I discovered comics in maybe 3rd or 4th grade, and I wanted to read them, but my teachers wouldn't let me read them. They were banned in the classroom, basically. And some of these comics, I'll be honest, they weren't the best reading material, but they engaged me. Like they kept me in the narrative and going forward. And I know some authors, like Jerry Craft, talks about how reading comics, they really gave him and developed his vocabulary. Next slide.
I'm in the chat. Sorry.
No, good. Go back.
Oh, there we go.
So, my teachers wouldn't let me read comics, and they wouldn't let me draw comics. I had to do all of that outside of the home. I actually did have to put my comic books inside of other books in the classroom. Next. My teachers wanted me to read prose novels, and those were the things that were available for me to read. Aside from like Where's Waldo, because that was like the book that came out when I was in 2nd grade, and it was like, oh my gosh, here's a book that we're being allowed to read. But anyway, I remember discovering this fantasy novel in the library at my school. Next. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it had a wizard who had a sword, and there was like a wolf, and it looked really cool to me. And it was like, I wanted that book to be part of my identity. It was like, I would hold it around like, this is a cool book. Look at me. I can read this book. But, when I actually tried to read it, next slide, I couldn't make heads or tails of the book I was trying to read. The cover told me it was cool and that it was, something I'd be into. But, I don't know if it was, I just didn't have the vocabulary yet, if I just didn't have the reading stamina, or maybe it just like there was a lot of made up words. I didn't really like a lot of made up words that made it difficult for me to read. Fantasy words that are made up. People like that stuff. That's great. But for me, here was a book I really wanted it to be accessible to me, and I couldn't access it. So when I think about all the amazing graphic novels we have today that are available to kids like, who maybe lacked engagement like I did, like I am so happy. I'm so happy, Tim said, comics have been around forever, at least the beginnings of it. But, in this country and in the way with modern printing, it's pretty new as far as what we can do with them and what we've done with them. And it's pretty impressive that we're living in this golden age of comics now, the 2nd golden age. Next. So, I felt stupid. I couldn't read these books. I just, felt that it was my fault. My brother could read really well, and he read tons of great big thick books, but I was that classic unengaged reader. Next. So I became a teacher about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and I've kind of taken that I guess desire to help kids read and to teach reading, and as a teacher, like there's no better feeling in the world to see a kid or help a kid, facilitate reading with children, and to see them really buy into books for their first time. It's like, it's the best feeling in the world. Next. And I'm lucky I get to kind of do that as well with the own books that I make. I know I only have like a minute left, but I wanted to share just kind of like my writing process that, you can talk with kids, and, Tim mentioned, there's a lot of pre-writing involved in making comics. Next. So when I make a comic, And I don't expect kids to go through all these processes. It's really labor intensive, but it's important to let them know that, your first draft, you can make lots of mistakes, make spelling mistakes, you scribble out stuff. That's how I approach my comics. I draw and write at the same time. And then I go through and I do a second draft. Next. And my second draft is really, my pencils, which I, go through and I make my art a little tighter. I make it, I fix the spelling. I start to, polish it a little bit. Next. And then I go through and I ink, which is, you just take a pen and you get to trace over your lines. It's the best part about making comics for me is that part of the process. Next. And because I make comics that are intended to be in color, the final stage is color. But there's no right or wrong way to approach color. And a lot of us have printed material and it looks kind of intimidating for kids because it's printed. Kids always want to know, how did the book actually get manufactured? How does it have a hardcover or something like that? It's important to remind kids that you can do anything. You can use any kind of materials, crayons. I know authors who use dirt. You can use anything. The one thing I at least feel like I'm accomplishing in this area is I try to draw in a way that's kind of has simple kind of shapes for the characters, and that kids can kind of copy that. But that's it for my part of the presentation right now. I know that I looked in the chat and looked at how some people were talking about drawing like a super librarian is one of the first ones I saw. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to try to draw a super librarian. If anyone else wants to do that too, they can. But I think I'm going to do that. So thank you everybody for listening.
I've got a little super librarian. That was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Aaron, thanks for sharing. I was doodling while I was listening, but I actually listen better while I'm doodling. So no offense taken, I hope.
None at all. I'm the same with you. Next slide, Tim, and I'll bow out and leave it to Mika.
Oh, hi. I'm Mika Song, and that's my debut graphic novel, Donut Feed the Squirrels. It's an early chapter book for ages 5 through 8, and it's a sweet, funny adventure about Norma and Belly, two scrappy squirrels that really, really, really want to get a donut from the donut truck. And yeah, there's a second book coming out in June called Apple of My Pie, which has them rescuing their grandpa squirrel from he thinks it's an apple farm, but it turns out it's a pie factory. So it's a rescue mission this time. And they're short books. They're like 100 pages long and 5 chapters each. And I think I have some interiors coming up. So next slide, please, Tim. Oh yeah, this is I wanted to show some of the process too, like Aaron, and this is from a old sketchbook a few years ago, where I think this is the first time I saw, the first time that the squirrels kind of appeared in my sketchbook. And I was actually working on a picture book at the time. And sometimes when I'm stuck, I just force myself to sit down with a book and just either draw or write. And if I'm really stuck, then sometimes I just write what I'm thinking, and just sometimes I'm just drawing lines, like different lines. But just it's kind of a strange, like little thing I have where it just keeps me at the desk for like 30 minutes. These are during times when I'm actually stuck. Usually I can't help being at the desk. So I find it really useful. But anyways, this one made me laugh because it says, "The smell of donuts takes over her mind." And I'm writing in third person, and I think I'm still like pretending that I'm trying to write and work here. And then, but actually there's a donut truck parked outside my window in Brooklyn at the time. And the smell of the donuts was actually bothering me. And so then I'm just like in first person, I need a donut. And then it's just like some other person, which is actually me, that's like, okay. And I think at that point I probably went and got a donut. But Tim, if you show the next slide. Thanks. That actually ended up being in the book, and it actually gave me an idea about like what the squirrels were going to do. So this is what my thumbnails look like, and it's a scene where they're smelling the donuts for the first time from this donut truck that comes to park. And if you show the next slide, Tim, thanks. Then this is the final book, and it's a lot of dialogue like this, very simple shapes, and I'll just read it. So Norma's the pointy one, and she's like, "Wait, I smell something. Burnt pancakes? No, something much sweeter, like honey. No, it smells like crispy sugar, oil, and a hint of linden flowers. Yes, it's coming from over by the old pine." And so that's just the two of them as they start their adventure, and they end up going through this elaborate plan and making a heist. But I kind of like the dialogue for read alouds, and for kids to, I like watching kids read the dialogue and kind of mimic it, or sort of play it out almost like dramatic play in their minds. And they're just sort of practicing, using language to communicate, because this is for like five-year-olds and up. So I think it's kind of accessible that way. And then next slide, please, Tim. I think it's the last one. Yeah, and then this is from a virtual visit. We've all been doing lots of virtual visits, I bet. And it's been really fun sharing the book, and it's actually pretty easy to share the book, virtually. It's like, it can be intimate, and I just read it straight off the book, and kids can actually draw like right where they are. So it would be much harder to facilitate that, I think, if they weren't at home with their own desk. And yeah, it's to me, this is like, I get a lot of ideas from doing these visits and seeing how kids interact with the characters, and also like there's a lot of space in the book, in the story, for interpretation. So there's a couple of questions that I like to ask, like who changed the sign? So at the very end, there's like a sign that's been scribbled over, right? And so I always ask like, who changed the sign? Or I say like, where did the donut come from? Because in the end, there's a donut present that's kind of mysterious. So there's like these little mysteries that I like to leave out, and then just see like if they made that connection themselves. So that's like a lot of fun for me. But that's it for my presentation. That's the full circle for me.
I love seeing those images of the kids. That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Jarrett.
Thanks. I just wanted to say it's so fun hearing all you guys talk, and I keep on nodding because I just feel like I'm with, like, I feel like we all get each other, and we're all talking about something that we all feel deeply about. That kind of goes into my little part of my spiel, is that for me, this is called making and teaching comics, and for me, the two go hand in hand. And I thought I would start just by saying that one thing I hear often, good intentioned people say that graphic novels are good to give to kids because they're easy and quick. And I think people very good intentionedly say, you just got to give a kid, like, they're easy and they're fun. And I understand where people like that come from. But for someone who, like me, and I'm guessing like everyone else on this panel, was a very visual learner and was very sensitive to visual stimulation, whether in the form of, just looking at things, whether in real life or on a page. Graphic novels, comics, the inclusion of the illustrations and of the comics actually make it a lot more dense and complicated of a thing. So I am more, when I'm reading a graphic novel, it often takes me a lot longer than it would to read a novel of the same amount of page, and it's more overwhelming and stimulating. So I just want to give that plug, because that's really where I think I got into the making of comics, was because I was a reader of comics. And I think the reason why I make my comics and my activity books, which include a lot of comics in them, how I do, is because of a lot of things. But I think one of the things is I felt like I couldn't access art. I felt like comics were the only place that I could access and have an artistic voice. So I just grabbed from my closet. I didn't even think of this until right now, but I recently found a sketchbook from high school and college. I just want to show you how I used to draw. This is how I thought you had to draw. It's just like how in college, I thought you had to read Dostoevsky and Tolstoy in order to be, you know, someone who was legitimate. And I thought I had to write like Dostoevsky in order to be, I thought I had to draw like, you know, like Michelangelo in order to be an artist and have an artistic voice. And I was so, because I believed all that stuff, it was really disorienting and really isolating. And it made me really unhappy. I loved art, but I couldn't find anything. And I think finally, when I got out of the wrong sort of headspaces and places, I finally realized I've been doing this all wrong. I've been letting these people dictate my values and sort of what is right. So I sort of come back to that when I hear some people say that graphic novels aren't real, or they're easy, or they're basic, or they're candy, and novels are like the broccoli and the meat. I kind of have that reaction where I feel really isolated. So I just wanted to mention that for the sake of the kids that you work with, and also because it's how I came to my artistic style, and I think in my work. So Tim, if you want to go, these are just a few slides. You can just go almost flip through whatever you want. These finish this comic slides. I think there's 2 or 3. Oh yeah, if you want to stay on the finish this comics. So these are finish this comics, and I include these in my activity books. And my activity books, this one's already out, and the second one comes out in May. But these are sort of like recipe books, or like maps to my imagination and my brain broken down. This is how I draw things, how I come up with ideas for stories. So like, you know, maybe create some of your own snack brands. That's one of the prompts in here. And that's something that might lead to a story for me. And if you can see, I went from drawing like I did in college and high school to almost like, I mean, as basic as you can get. So I try to use straight lines, simple shapes, and letter forms, because I think that's accessible to everyone. You know, circles, squares, rectangles, trapezoids, straight lines, and I use a lot of letter U's and letter W's. So that's how I draw, and that's how I make my comics. And to me, I learned how to draw and how to make comics, and how to read comics, how to make comics, just by diving in and trying to create. But I find that a lot of kids are, rightly so, intimidated by a blank page. So I came up with this idea to start a lot of comics and stop them. And then kids can dive right in and finish for me. I feel like they create more confidently and excitedly when you give them an idea, a little germ of an idea for something. Yeah, and then my first graphic novel is Mist Meal Mayhem. It's the Hunger Heroes. Thanks, Tim. So it's the first in the Hunger Heroes series of graphic novels. And you can see that these ideas, my style of wanting kids, like Aron said, and like Mika alluded to, I think with her style, I want kids to look and say, oh, Chip Ninja, the tortilla chip, is just a triangle with a couple circles on it. And I want them to say, you know, Tammy, the tomato, is just a big oval. So I want kids to see my art, and instead of being impressed by what I can do. I want them to reflect and be impressed by what they can do and say, I can draw like that dude. So I have abandoned this in favor of this because I think it can include more kids in the creative process and in having a voice and in not feeling isolated. And also, I don't want to use too much time, but I'll just say quickly, and if it comes up again, that I think by including and incorporating more creativity into the curriculum, into the classroom, you are going to engage so many more students and engage them more deeply and meaningfully. If you can let kids be creative while learning, that learning is going to stick more, it's going to matter more, and they're going to have more fun doing it. So that's sort of like a mishmash of all of my ideas and stuff. I don't know if there's any, there might be one more, there's a couple more drawings if you just want to quickly flip through. So there's like one of the more complicated drawings, the inside of the hovercraft, but all those are just, again, basic shapes. Sometimes I feel like to my own detriment, I rely on straightness and rigidity. So I usually draw a page of this and then get a sketchbook and just draw no straight lines because I'm sick of them. But for better or worse, that's the style for these books that I've adapted. Yeah.
And I would say, Jarrett, you're missing, Jarrett knows the health struggles my son has. And one of it, he has fine motor control issues. And that's the other part of the simple shapes is my son loves comics so much, but doesn't think that he can draw. And with those simple shapes, because we've used your book over the summer, even with my 9th grader who loves it too. And we've had some funny stories, but he's able to draw those shapes and he finds that success. And that makes him want to learn how to do better as well. So I thank you for that.
Thanks. Yeah.
All right. Remy?
Thanks, everyone. I was drawing this. I was doodling everyone's faces. So that's like what Jarod said. I actually learn better when I'm doodling and listening at the same time. So yeah, so over the years in school, I would have drawn all my teachers. Yeah. And so I was actually going to give a talk about how my process, but then I kind of think everyone else's is a lot more interesting because mine is pretty standard, just manuscript and then sketches and then finals. And so I thought I would talk about why I chose the formats for my book, because my first 2 books, Panda, Sky and Fly on the Wall, are hybrid. So it's a prose and graphic novel hybrid. Next, please, Tim. So this one is from Pie in the Sky. So you can see there are like you can't actually read the story without the pictures. It wouldn't make sense. But I actually, when I first wrote this book, I wrote it as a full graphic novel. But then I decided, when I drew up the sample pages, I realized that this story wasn't really best told in a graphic novel format, because it's about these 2 boys who moved to Australia and they can't speak English. So the things that you know about them is mostly from their thoughts. They don't really speak a lot in English. So I didn't want a graphic novel with a lot of thought balloons for middle grade age. So that's why I changed it. I actually converted it all to fully prose, but then I realized I kind of missed the pictures. And as a visual thinker, I couldn't say certain things better without the pictures. So that's why I put the pictures back in. And I think it works really well because so you can see the picture there at the bottom. That's where the boy first heard English being spoken to him, and the only word that he recognized was the word please, and all the other words sounded like an alien language. And I feel like that picture says more than I could actually ever say in pictures, in words. So that's next, please. Oops. Yeah, so my second book is also pretty much the same, with the same format. So for me, for now, when I think of creating a hybrid book, I kind of want there to be a reason for the book to be in that format instead of fully prose or fully graphic novel. So for this one, the boy the main character in the book is actually also an artist. So he draws. So the book is supposed to be his diary. So that's how you can see the diary lines and everything. So all the artwork in there are supposed to be done by him. So that's why I chose that format. And the the art in Pie in the Sky and Fly on the Wall are a little bit different in that in Fly on the Wall, it's a little bit sketchier because it's supposed to mimic, someone doodling in his diary. Okay, next, please. And there are actually two different styles of art in Fly on the Wall because he actually created this anonymous, the main character created this anonymous webcomic that he drew in a different art style. So you can see that's different. Yeah, next, please. And there are also things in the book that I couldn't, that works better in pictures. So for example, the main character actually has a nemesis. His name is a boy named Tim. But for most of the story, Henry actually draws this nemesis as a frog because he calls him a frog. So in most of the book, that nemesis appears as a frog. And it's only at the end when he discovers that is actually, this Tim person is actually a person. It's a person just like him. And that's when in the visuals you see that he saw the frog as a boy. And next, please. So this one is one of the pages at the back where the boy, the main character says something that he has been really afraid to say all this while. So I actually got this idea when I was looking at my own sketchbooks. In my own sketchbooks, I like to draw like pictures of myself, like a small little comic head of myself saying the things that I wouldn't dare to say in real life out loud. So that's what I do. And so this is what I do in my in this book. And this was actually, so I decided, so sometimes when I decide to do certain things in my books, I don't have the words to explain to you why I do what I do, it feels like it's based on a feeling. It's hard to find the words. But when I was actually presenting this page to a school, one of the teachers told me that this was like a visual salience. So that's kind of when I strip everything off and then just have like that one line there or that one picture there. So yeah. Next, please. My next book is actually, which is coming out in May, is actually a whole full graphic novel. So I decided to do this because it's a book about a dog and my dog. And I think it's really best in this format because I cannot tell you in words like how happy a dog is in words, like he's a happy dog. It's not, I can't convey it as well as I could and with pictures. So if you can see on the left page, that is actually the dog about to roll in poop. And I don't know if you can see there, but you can see the smile on his face just as he's about to roll in the poop. And I don't know how to say that in words. I think that's why this book, which is so fun, is in a graphic novel format. Yeah, I think so. That's how I chose the formats for my books. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you. All right, and Jarrod.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jarod Rosello. I'll try to be quick because I know Tim has a lot of really great stuff after this too. I'm a cartoonist and a writer. I'm also a teacher, specifically a writing teacher, and I've been teaching writing for about 15 years now. I'm also a literacies researcher, and I spend a lot of time drawing comics with elementary school students, kindergarten through 5th grade students, and so my own books are Red Panda and Moon Bear, which came out last July, and the next book in the series, which I don't think I'm allowed to show the cover of yet, so I've blocked out all of the secret stuff, I guess. But it's called Red Panda and Moon Bear: The Curse of the Evil Eye, and so features those characters. Tim, could you go to the next slide, please? So my cartooning, I come to cartooning not as a writer and not even as a reader of comics as a kid. But as a kid who loved animation and cartoons and playing with action figures in my backyard. And I actually, when I visit schools, I tell kids that I learned how to tell stories by watching cartoons and playing action figures with my brother. And so it wasn't until I was maybe 18 that I started reading comics and realized, oh my gosh, this is this stuff that I loved as a kid. Here it is, it's in these pages. And so I actually was not a reader even until I was in high school. And one of the things that one of the things that I realized about my own work was that in addition to, our panel, we've been talking a lot about literacy practices, but when you're drawing comics, there's also a sort of cartoon literacy that you might find in your drawings. And so if you're looking at my drawings here and thinking, oh, I feel like I can see Adventure Time in there, you're identifying the sort of larger network and assemblage of literacies that's at work, right? All of the sort of things that come into play that are not necessarily text-based, but that might be at work in your students' writing and drawing. And so when I work with kids, I'll sometimes have teachers say, wow, did you see this cool thing they created? And I'm like, yeah, that's Lady Rainicorn from Adventure Time. But you need to watch Adventure Time to know that. And so sometimes I think reading children's books, but also engaging with children's media helps you fill out the world of their literacy practices and all of the things that are influencing them. And because comics is also pop culture, there's a little bit of comics that doesn't belong to anybody, but already belongs to the kids. And so teaching comics in class is also about bringing something into the classroom that belongs in some ways more to the kids you're trying to teach than it does to you, because it's tapping into some of their spaces. And so I begin comics by drawing characters. And when I'm drawing, I'm really following, I think Remy mentioned this too, that sometimes you don't always have the words for the thing you're doing, because I think when you draw from a place of desire and sensation and affect, and these are outside of the bounds of language, and sometimes you don't know why you're drawing or why you like this thing, but you do, and it feels good and you want to just continue to do it. And so I think desire is a really important part of drawing. So I draw characters sometimes for years that I desire to draw, and it's after a while that I'm like, I'm going to start telling a story about this character. And so you'll notice these drawings of characters, they're just kind of blank in some ways. There isn't really anything to them. They're just a design of a character. After I've designed the character, though, in order for me to really figure out how to tell a story, I need to get this character moving and talking. Tim, could you go to the next slide, please? And so then I'll start to put the character in positions where they're interacting with other characters, so I can begin to hear their voice, so I can begin to see what they look like as they move on the page. And every drawing that I do helps me understand this character a little bit more and more, helps me understand what kinds of stories they might find themselves in, what kind of worlds they might inhabit, how they might respond or react if a monster showed up. Would they jump into battle to stop it, or would they get scared and run away and hide behind a rock? And all of these things aren't necessarily decisions I make in advance, but things that I discover through the process of drawing. And it's not necessarily a logical process, but one that just sort of emerges on the page in that moment. And then Tim, could you switch over one more? And then after I feel like I have a sense of their voice, then I start putting them in situations. And so here are Red Panda and Moonbear. This is actually the first chapter of the next book that's out in January, and it's called Attack of the Pastelito Monster. So a pastelito is a Cuban pastry. In this case, it's a guava and cheese pastry. And so they're running around the city here. So the shadowy figures somewhere around here. They turn down this alleyway, and they see this shadow here that looks kind of scary and monstrous. And so Tim, could you go to the next page? And then they consult their book, and they determine that rampaging is in fact evil, and so this is probably an evil shadow. And so so this last page is black and white, but I also wanted to just share something that part of my drawing in based on my feelings, that I don't always make decisions in advance. Before I designed what the monster looks like, all I had drawn was this shadow. And so when I decided to do the next page and I needed to design this monster, I was like, well, I did this shadow and this is my constraint. So how can I turn this shadow into a monster that's also a pastelito? And so I took some of the basic forms and turned it into, and so, the role of desire and joy, I think, as a creator is really, really important. And you probably have kids in your class who are artists and drawers who are makers. And so some of their writing, some of their reading might be, if they were like me, I read to support my making. And so I always wanted to read a book that I had to put down because it inspired me to go and write or tell a story or make something. It was unlikely to finish a book that didn't inspire me to make something also. And so I'm thinking about reading as it relates to how we make things and what inspires us and how we build those constraints around us. And so I'll stop there because I know we have a ton of great stuff from Tim also. That's a little bit of insight into my process and how I approach things. So
Thanks. So we have about 4 minutes left. So I put in the chat, I didn't even think about this ahead of time. If you want to send me an email, we'll fix the presentation and I'll send you all the link. I've got in addition to all the awesomeness that everybody talked about, I put in specific lesson ideas for each of the books. That's me and my son. And that'll be part of the presentation, so we can send it to you. I don't want to just run through and not have a chance to share about everybody's. I was saying to all the panelists that I could spend at least a half day teacher workshop with these books alone. I mean, if you can see, like as a teacher, right? Like we all go through, each book has sticky notes and different ideas, and even the ideas that I put in to the PowerPoint aren't even all the things that I put in these books. I mean, I think we also need to get past the idea of these books. Like people ask me, I'm a reading specialist, and people ask me all the time about Lexile. Who cares? Like, let kids read above the reading level, below the reading level. I can use Mr. Wolf's class to teach about prediction and essay writing in a college level course. I can also use it to teach about prediction and topic sentence in a kindergarten class. So let's move beyond that. These books are so awesome. So again, we only have about 2 minutes left. I just want to thank all the panelists for sharing all this. Again, I'm a big fan. My kids are sitting in the room. Like, I'm kind of cool for a couple of seconds here because I get to be with these cool folks. So yeah, my nerdiness has paid off a little bit. So again, my email is in the chat. Feel free to email me, and I'm happy to send you this link.
We started late. Can you? I mean, I don't know if there's something else right at like immediately after, but I mean, you can.
Well, I know that the hosts have to go to like the next.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're tied up too. We could do a whole, maybe we can all do something, again, like I said, we could spend hours doing this. But I just don't want to rush through. Man, look at what you all are drawing.
Can we have all the drawings up and I can take a little photo? Is that okay?
That's great.
Cause awesome. Yay. Mika, what did you draw?
There you go. Sorry.
Thanks.
Oh man.
Oh, Mika, you're muted. All right, good. I got the picture. It's a spider.
Yeah,
That's
it's
so
a
cool.
super spider, a
Nice.
librarian. Yeah.
You can grab all the books at once that someone needs.
Yeah, all the
Multiple
recommendations are like,
Yeah.
you know.
So someone in the
awesome.
chat had put how to help your kids in distance learning, and I interpreted that to mean like how to keep your kids engaged during. So here, that's how I
Nice.
do it.
That would do it.
You scream at them through the computer.
I just want to, since we all talked about our own books and Tim plugged all of our books, I want to plug Tim's work. If you guys haven't checked out Tim's website, it's a treasure trove of amazingness. You could just go on there. Yeah, there's the link. Sarah included the link. You can go on there and just sort of like have a teaching career. He's put literally everything you can imagine in there. It's just a phenomenal website. I recommend it almost every day, and I go to it constantly. So I recommend you go check it out.
Thank you. And follow Sarah's link. I put in the wrong thing in the chat. So follow Sarah's link in the chat. It's historycomics.net, but it's all subject areas. It's all levels. It's not just history comics. So I appreciate that, Jarrett. And I actually have a book coming out this summer from Routledge about all this kind of stuff too. So I have to get that done too. So I'm excited about that too. So
What's that going to be called?
Teaching with Comics. So working title, if you will. But yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited. So thank you all, everybody, for all this awesomeness. And again, to Katie and Sarah, just for inviting us and making this all happen. I mean, my mind's been blown. And if you missed some of the other panels from yesterday and the graphic novels and today, it's great that everything's recorded and we'll be able to watch it. So, you know, again, feel free to reach out to us. You can it's in the chat where we all are on social media. Feel free to reach out to any and all of us. And again, thanks so much for coming, but we're out of time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Nice bullet, Aaron.